Hello, everybody. So grateful to be with us here at ULT San Diego for the Aquarian series. This evening, the title of the presentation is Bhakti Yoga, which will be given to us by Mr. Patrick Horn. So we will start this evening's presentation with a reading from the Bhagavad Gita. Chapter 12. Devotion by means of faith. Among those of thy devotees who always thus worship thee, which take the better way? Those who worship the indivisible and unmanifested, or those who serve thee as thou now art? Krishna. Those who worship me with constant zeal, with the highest faith and minds placed on me, are held in high esteem by me. But those who with minds equal toward everything, with senses and organs restrained, and rejoicing in the good of all creatures, meditate on the inexhaustible, immovable, highest, incorruptible, difficult to contemplate, invisible, omnipresent, unthinkable, the witness, undemonstrable, shall also come unto me. For those whose hearts are fixed on the manifested, the labor is greater, because the path which is not manifest is with difficulty attained by corporeal beings. But for those who worship me, renouncing in me all their actions, regarding me as the supreme goal, and meditating on me alone, if their thoughts are turned to me, O son of Pritha, I presently become the savior from this ocean of incarnations and death. Place then thy heart on me, penetrate me with thy understanding, and thou shalt without doubt hereafter dwell in me. But if thou shouldest be unable at once steadfastly to fix thy heart and mind on me, strive then, O Dhananjaya, to find me by constant practice in devotion. If after constant practice thou art still unable, follow me by actions performed for me. For by doing works for me thou shalt attain perfection. But if thou art unequal even to this, then being self-restrained, place all thy works, failures, and successes alike on me, abandoning in me the fruit of every action. For knowledge is better than constant practice. Meditation is superior to knowledge. Renunciation of the fruit of action to meditation. Final emancipation immediately results from such renunciation. My devotee who is free from enmity, well disposed towards all creatures, merciful, wholly exempt from pride and selfishness, the same in pain and pleasure, patient of wrongs, contented, constantly devout, self-governed, firm in resolves, and whose mind and heart are fixed on me alone, is dear unto me. He also is my beloved, of whom mankind is not afraid, and who has no fear of man, who is free from joy, from despondency, and the dread of harm. My devotee who is unexpecting, pure, just, impartial, devoid of fear, and who hath forsaken interest in the results of action, is dear unto me. He also is worthy of my love, who never rejoiceth nor findeth fault, who neither lamenteth nor coveteth, and being my servant, hath forsaken interest in both good and evil results. He also is my beloved servant, who is equal-minded to friend or foe, the same in honor and dishonor, in cold and heat, in pain and pleasure, and is unsolicitous about the event of things, to whom praise and blame are as one, who is of little speech, content with whatever cometh to pass, who hath no fixed habitation, and whose heart full of devotion is firmly fixed. But those who seek this sacred ambrosia, the religion of immortality, even as I have explained it, full of faith, intent on me above all others, and united to devotion, are my most beloved. Thus, in the Upanishads called the Holy Bhagavad Gita, in the science of the Supreme Spirit, in the book of devotion, in the colloquy between the Holy Krishna and Arjuna, stands the 12th chapter by name, Devotion by Means of Faith.
I think that it's time to begin the talk. I will start with a traditional Sanskrit invocation, followed by an English translation. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahano Bunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahe Tejasvina Tamastu Ma Vidvishahe. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Let us be nourished and protected. Let us work together with great strength and in harmony. Let our study be fruitful and enlightening. May there be no quarrels among us. Om, peace, peace, peace. Okay, so it is my honor to be here with you again on the topic of Bhakti Yoga. What I like about the United Lodge of Theosophists is the independent devotion to the theosophical cause of forming a nucleus of the Universal Brotherhood, doing the comparative study of religion, philosophy, and science, and investigating laws of nature and human potential, including spiritual laws and spiritual potential, not just the physical, material world. I am a initiated disciple in the lineage founded by Swami Vivekananda, who was the star speaker at the first Parliament of Religions, where there was also a Theosophical Congress. And in my last talk, I talked about a history of Vivekananda giving 2 lectures at the New York Universal Brotherhood Lodge, the American headquarters for Theosophy at the time. On March 17th, 1895, what is Vedanta? March 24th, 1895, what is yoga? Now, the connection with Theosophy, Swami Vivekananda gave sannyasi initiation to Leon Landsberg, who was a resident and a speaker at the New York Lodge. He also gave sannyasi to Mary Louise, who was very close to Claude Falls Wright, who was a member of Madame Blavatsky's esoteric school or esoteric section. And Swami Vivekananda also gave sannyasi initiation to Dr. J.C. Street, who claimed to be a theosophist and probably had the second most popular book at the time to The Secret Doctrine. And there was some discussion of this by William Q. Judge in some of the publications at the time. Today, I'm not doing a big history lesson. leading us into, from the connection with Swamiji, into some of the teachings on Bhakti Yoga from the perspective of Swamiji and teachers in the lineage that he founded. Henrietta Mueller, Miss Mueller, was a theosophist at the 1893 Congress who gave Swami Vivekananda the money to buy land along the Ganga for the headquarters for the order that he founded. And Mr. E.T. Sturdy, who was also a member of the esoteric school or esoteric section, gave Swami Vivekananda lodging in London. And you can see "There is no religion higher than truth" was etched into the fireplace mantle at Mr. Sturdy's home. He worked on a translation with Swami Vivekananda on Bhakti Yoga, where some of this information is drawn from. And Swami Vivekananda was invited to the Blavatsky Lodge by Annie Besant to give a lecture on Bhakti. And Colonel Olcott was there. And Swamiji and Colonel Olcott, for those who don't know, had exchanged letters prior to the Parliament of World's Religions in 1893. And so this was a grand occasion when Swamiji talked about the processes and practices of devotion. And so today, using some of his teachings and the teachings of his brother disciples, I'm going to go through different modes of bhakti and the methods and goals of discipleship, starting with Swami Vivekananda's explanation of human potential, which is each soul is potentially divine. The goal is to manifest this divinity by controlling nature, external and internal. Do this either by work, karma, or worship, bhakti, or psychic control, meditation or Raja Yoga, or philosophy, Jnana Yoga. By one or more or all of these and be free. This is the whole of religion. Doctrines or dogmas or rituals or books or temples or forms are but secondary details. We take in all that has been in the past, enjoy the light of the present, and open every window of the heart for all that will come in the future. When Swami Vivekananda says worship, he means bhakti, or love and devotion. Therefore, now bhakti will be explained. Bhakti means devotion, attachment to God, and reverence. The Bhakti Sutra is attributed to the Deva Rishi Narada, whose name means wisdom giver. Some say that he is the son of the creator Brahma and wife Saraswati. He is a devotee of Vishnu, a traveling musician and storyteller. He is wise, mischievous, comical, the master of all knowledge and religious rites, an eloquent interpreter, a messenger among the gods, and the first journalist. He defines bhakti as sincere love for this. Narada does not use the word God, but the indefinite neuter pronoun this. One reason is that he wished his teachings to be completely non-sectarian. God, the ultimate reality, is to be experienced with the opening of divine sight. Furthermore, when a man experiences God, he is unable to express him in terms of relative experiences. Bhakti is of two kinds. Gayuni Bhakti refers to the path of devotion, the ways and means which lead to the experience of Para Bhakti, intense love for God. There are two stages of spiritual experience. The devotee first experiences what is known as Savikalpa Samadhi, that is to say, he has a vision of his chosen ideal or particular aspect of God accompanied by inexpressible bliss. There is still a sense of separateness from God, but at an even higher stage, love, lover, and the beloved become one. There is complete union with God in this samadhi, which is known as nirvikalpa. Then God is experienced as impersonal, immanent, and transcendent. Bhakti is already well known to all. Only its real nature and implications are not grasped by everyone, hence the need for a clear definition. The experience of bhakti is not a rare hallucination, eluding to all scientific treatment. It is a common experience of all devotees, and as such, it deserves careful consideration in the hands of all lovers of truth and is fit to be made the subject of rational inquiry. Bhakti Yoga is a real, genuine search after God, a search beginning, continuing, and ending in love. One single moment of the madness of extreme love to God brings us eternal freedom. The one great advantage of bhakti is that it is the easiest and the most natural way to reach the great divine end in view. Its great disadvantage is that in its lower forms, it oftentimes degenerates into hideous fanaticism. That singleness of attachment to a loved object, without which no genuine love can grow, is often, very often, the cause of the denunciation of everything else. All the weak and undeveloped minds in every religion or country have only one way of loving their own ideal, that is, by hating every other ideal. This explains why the same man who is so lovingly attached to his own ideal of God, so devoted to his own ideal of religion, becomes a howling fanatic as soon as he sees or hears anything of any other ideal. This kind of love is somewhat like the canine instinct of guarding the master's property from intrusion. Only the instinct of the dog is better than the reason of man, for the dog never mistakes its master for an enemy in whatever dress he may come before it. Again, the fanatic loses all power of judgment. But this danger exists only in that stage of bhakti which is called the preparatory. When bhakti has become ripe and has passed into that form which is called the supreme, no more is there any fear of these hideous manifestations of fanaticism. That soul which is overpowered by this higher form of bhakti is too near the God of love, to become an instrument for the diffusion of hatred. Every sect and every religion presents only one ideal of its own to mankind, but a universal religion opens to mankind an infinite number of doors for ingress into the inner shrine of divinity and places before humanity an almost inexhaustible array of ideals, there being in each one of them a manifestation of the eternal one. With the kindest courtesy, a universal religion points out to aspiring men and women the numerous roads hewn out of the solid rock of the realities of human life by the glorious sons, daughters, or human manifestations of God in the past and in the present, and stands welcoming with outstretched arms to all. For those that are even yet to be, welcoming to that home of truth and that ocean of bliss, wherein the human soul, liberated from ignorance and confusion, may transport itself with perfect freedom and with eternal joy. Bhakti therefore lays on us the imperative command not to hate or deny any one of the various paths that lead to salvation, to redemption, to reconciliation, to freedom. Yet the growing plant must be hedged round to protect it until it has grown into a tree. The tender plant of spirituality will die if exposed too early to the action of a constant change of ideas and ideals. Many people, in the name of what may be called religious liberalism, may be seen feeding their idle curiosity with a continuous succession of different ideals. With them, hearing new things grows into a kind of disease, a sort of religious drink mania. They want to hear new things just so they can get a temporary nervous excitement. And when such exciting influence has had its effect on them, they are ready for another. Religion is with these people a sort of intellectual opium eating, and there it ends. Narada says arguments are to be avoided because there is no end to them and they lead to no satisfactory result. There are three kinds of devotees: superior, mediocre, and inferior. The inferior devotee says God is out there. According to him, God is different from his creation. The mediocre devotee says God is the inner guide. God dwells in everyone's heart. The mediocre devotee sees God in the heart. But the superior devotee sees that God alone has become everything. He finds that everything above and below is filled with God. God dwells in all beings in his infinitude. That is to say, one infinite, absolute reality, Brahman, dwells equally in all beings and everywhere. But there is a difference in the degree of manifestations. God's most perfect manifestation is in his devotees. The great ones who have attained purity tell us that we do not have to run away from the sense objects or withdraw from the world, but that we must move among sense objects without attachment or aversion. The seeker must do three things. He must prostrate before the Guru, which means he must approach him humbly with a heart full of longing to realize God. Then he must question him. When the Guru instructs him, he should not just accept his words at face value, but try to understand the teachings in order to remove all doubts from the mind. Also, a devotee must give personal service, which also means following the teachings. An aspirant must also live in solitude. This does not mean to live in solitude throughout life. There is then the danger of becoming self-centered. To live in solitude for some time, or even occasionally, is very important and necessary for householders and for monks. While living in solitude, intensify your longing for God. Meditate, chant, sing praises, study the scriptures, and meditate on their meaning. Thus must you pass your time for some while, so that love for God may grow. Study of the scriptures is necessary for beginners. Study regularly, then try to understand by meditating upon the teachings, and then live and act accordingly. This is not a teaching for the weak, the fickle, the rude, the unenthusiastic, or ill-prepared. The aspirant who is brave, strong, and desires virtue is destined for perfection. There are three treasures for a sincere seeker of spirituality. First, a human birth. Second, a desire for truth and freedom. And third, apprenticeship to an illumined master. Any teaching is to be imparted to those who are competent enough to receive and assimilate it. But it should not be spoken before anybody and everybody, because that would not be helpful. Not only that, people who are reluctant will ridicule the teacher. Hence the necessity of selecting the right type of candidates to whom a teaching is to be imparted. What is the subject matter that is to be taught? For whom is this teaching meant? Who has the competence to receive this teaching? What is the objective, or what is the desired goal? What is the benefit of learning this and going through this practice? What is the relationship between the teaching and the objective to be attained by following the teaching? It is not meant for curiosity seekers, nor for intellectual speculation. Only those who want to shape their lives in accordance with this teaching are competent to know it. There are people who are not satisfied with their present state of life, who feel that there is something lacking in life, but do not know how that lack or imperfection can be removed. That is, they are seeking something, but do not know how to get that. It is for such people that this teaching will be helpful. The idea is, if people are satisfied with their existing condition, there is no desire in them to learn. If people are engrossed in the enjoyment of the senses, they will not feel any inclination to hear about God. The seeker must not misunderstand the goal. Therefore, the aspirant must have a clear direction about how he or she should proceed, what the pitfalls are, and what the goal is. A mere study of the subject is not enough. After having the knowledge of the path of devotion, one has to practice it for the attainment of the goal. Everybody does not feel the need for God. Many are satisfied with what the world of mind and senses can offer them. But there comes a time when, through the process of growth and evolution, and also through frustrations in life, a person feels the need for God. If a man attains love for God, this love leads him directly to realize, experience oneness with God, the self, and all beings. And this is the most natural and easy path. A study of any subject will appeal only to one who has an intense desire for knowing the subject. It is likely to profit only one who has the capacity to understand and is readily practiced only by one who is free from disabilities and possesses the opportunity. A firm faith in the grace of the Lord and in the possibility of escape from the round of birth and death is the only special qualification for the study of bhakti and practice of divine love. Even illiteracy is no bar, nor a previous record of a vicious life. However, an aspirant cannot afford to be careless about his surroundings and association while one is still an aspirant in the early stages of spiritual practice. One should not trust oneself in the midst of temptations. Every reason, object, and event that stimulates lower passions must be carefully shunned. Just as a man hankering after health has to be away from unsuitable foods, surroundings, and activities, so the seeker after perfection and liberation must place himself in a situation in which he or she is not exposed to temptations and injurious influences. Again, just as one desiring a strong and agile body has to attend a gymnasium and exercise his body under expert guidance, so also a genuine aspirant after spirituality shall have to resort to a perfect spiritual guide and endeavor in the light of the instructions and example with reverence and readiness to serve him. The spiritual aspirant should try to imitate the lives and actions of the enlightened ones. He should keep his goal always before him, union with God. Patience and perseverance are two characteristics of a true spiritual aspirant. How are we to know a teacher then? The sun requires no torch to make him visible. We need not light a candle in order to see him. When the sun rises, we instinctively become aware of the fact, and when a teacher of men comes to help us, the soul will instinctively know that truth has already begun to shine upon it. Truth stands on its own evidence. It does not require any other testimony to prove it true. It is self-effulgent. The teachers whose wisdom and truth shine like the light of the sun are the very greatest the world has known, and they are worshipped as God by the major portion of mankind. We ourselves do not possess enough intuition to judge properly of the man from whom we receive teaching and guidance. So there ought to be a certain tests, certain conditions for the teacher to satisfy, as there also is for the taught. Sri Ramakrishna, pictured here, said there are three classes of physicians: superior, mediocre, and inferior. The physician who feels the patient's pulse and just says to him, take the medicine regularly, belongs to the inferior class. He doesn't care to inquire whether or not the patient has actually taken the medicine. The mediocre physician is he who in various ways persuades the patient to take the medicine and says to him, sweetly, my good man, how will you be cured unless you use the medicine? Take the medicine. I have made it for you myself. But he who, finding the patient stubbornly refusing to take the medicine, forces it down his throat, going so far as to put his knee on the patient's chest, is the best physician. Like physicians, there are three kinds of spiritual teachers. The inferior teacher only gives instruction to the disciples, but makes no inquiries about their progress. The mediocre teacher, for the good of the student, makes repeated efforts to bring the instruction home to him, begs him to assimilate it, and shows him love in many other ways. But there is a type of teacher who goes to the length of using force when he finds the student persistently unyielding. I call him the best teacher. Bhakti Yoga, as I've said, is divided into the preparatory and the supreme forms. We shall find as we go on how in the preparatory stage we unavoidably stand in need of many concrete helps to enable us to progress Godward. It is also a significant fact that spiritual giants have been produced only in these systems of religion where there is an exuberant growth of rich mythology and ritualism. All descriptions of God can be only relative to the aspirant's spiritual development. It must be colored by the predilections, capacities, and needs of the person describing or the persons to whom the description is addressed. Each view of God is only a partial view of the whole truth. Accepting the doctrine of a chosen ideal, each aspirant may conceive of God in his own way as the most perfect ideal of his thinking and suitable to his own capacities and needs. He may then love and worship that ideal with his whole heart, but he should be liberal enough to give the same freedom of thought and worship to others. The aspirant must also not forget that his God is only his own view of the divine truth from his level of spiritual development, and that the God of another is but a different view of the same truth from another viewpoint. Ritualistic worship is a great aid in fixing one's mind, heart, and God. Most people misunderstand external worship, thinking it to be dualistic. In fact, it is non-dualistic. For the worshiper must not only perform the ritual, but try to meditate on his unity with Brahman. There is also a widely accepted but mistaken ideal that formal worship is only for beginners in spiritual life. It is true that it is a great aid to beginners, but those masters who have experienced the supreme truth, who have seen God and experienced oneness with Brahman, often continue to practice ritual worship. There comes a time in the growth of a spiritual aspirant when it becomes impossible to talk of anything but God. And if the aspirant hears any worldly topics, runs away. The various objects which devotees may worship according to their spiritual development may be classified as follows. The personal God under the aspect and designation of Vishnu, Shiva, etc. A concrete representation of the deity, or a symbol or image, pratika or pratima, which would be a reminder of the personal God. An actual man in flesh and blood, for example, an avatara, or one's own spiritual guide or guru. Not any one special individual, but humanity as a whole. the universal brotherhood. The whole world conceived as the manifestation of the Supreme Being, or the inner controller of all the objects in the world. It may be one's own transcendental Atman, which is too much of an abstraction to be worshipped and loved. According to Ramanuja, the purity of a devotee has 7 characteristics: the power of discernment, freedom from desire which causes suffering, abhasya, which is perseverance and practice and discipline, a life of action, virtue, cheerfulness, and an absence of excessive hilarity. In other words, don't be a fool. This is similar to the yamas and niyamas given as preparatory steps to yoga, defined in Patanjali's Yoga Sutra as control of the activities of the mind. Renunciation is necessary. Of all renunciation, the most natural is that of Bhakti Yoga. Here is no violence, nothing to give up, nothing to tear off, as it were, from ourselves, nothing which we have to separate ourselves violently. The Bhakta has not to suppress any single one emotion. He only strives to intensify them and direct them to God. The Bhakta's renunciation is that vairagya, or non-attachment for all things that are not God, which results from anuraga, or great attachment to God. The yamas, or austerities of yoga, include abstinence from harm and in thought, word, and deed, honesty, non-hoarding, non-stealing, and practice of the presence of God. The niyamas are the disciplines such as keeping your body clean and your mind pure, practicing contentment, generous service, self-inquiry, and attention to God through devotional practices. The afflictions which disturb the mind include avidya, ignorance, misconception, or misperception; asmita, false identity; raga, which is the attraction and aversion, attraction and attachment. Devesha is aversion and hatred. And then there is fear of death and clinging to the world. Another aid to bhakti is holy company, a fellowship of intimate mutual love and spiritual culture. This could involve an introduction to ideals and practices and history of a traditional lineage, perhaps private counseling, personal instruction in meditation or other disciplines, and transmission of spiritual power from an unbroken succession of teachers. An initiated disciple must be obedient to the guru's directions in a simple lifestyle of religious pursuits and service. A transfer of power can be instantaneous or delayed, or requiring the disciple's effort through techniques and practices or sadhana. However, nobody has attained God by sadhana or spiritual practices, and nobody ever will. Sadhana is for the purification of the mind. The natural perfection of the human soul is manifested only when the various faculties of the mind are purified and coordinated harmoniously, and spiritual practices are meant to effect this through the cultivation of various faculties of the mind. Since the doctrines taught by Narada are entirely bereft of all sectarian bias, they may safely be adopted by all religious seekers, irrespective of birth, persuasion, or sect. If any of the teachings of a particular teacher or sect goes against the universal and essential principles set forth, one should be extremely cautious in accepting them, for they are likely to harm the attainment of the end in view. Difference in opinion is admissible regarding the highest realization, which is indescribable. To attain perfection means to realize oneness with God, or to unfold the divinity which is already within our human potential. This perfection is not something to be attained, for the true being, the self, the Atman, is one with Brahman. Only ignorance covers the truth of God within us and obstructs our divine light. This perfection is also moksha, or liberation, which means that when the bonds of ignorance have been cut, a man not only attains freedom from all imperfections and limitations, but also from the law of karma and from birth, death, and rebirth. A disciple must have a strong desire to hear the teaching of a master, to listen, mentally comprehend, and memorize the teaching, to question and test the teaching for a refined and nuanced mental comprehension before the ultimate realization of truth. That's this last slide here. According to Vyasa's commentary, there are stages of practice. The neophyte's first light of dawn becomes the honey stage of delight in truth, and finally the attainment of wisdom, becoming master of the internal and the external. Then there is nothing further to accomplish beyond suffering. In the Sri Bhagavatam, Lord Krishna explains 9 processes of bhakti: hearing about God, chanting and singing songs about God, remembering God, bowing to God, engaging in ceremonial worship and prayer, being obedient and serving your guru, and surrendering to the will of God in love. Chaitanya describes 9 stages of bhakti. First, shraddha, faith, which leads to association with other devotees, the performance of devotional service, the decreasing of unwanted attachments as there is steadiness, sweetness, attachment to God, ecstasy, and pure love. There are 3 forms of love through which one may prepare oneself for the attainment of supreme love. From one point of view, these 3 forms are classified as follows. A man may devote himself to God because he feels distressed or world-weary. 2, he may devote himself to God because his unfulfilled earthly desire and prays for their fulfillment. He has unfulfilled desires and wants them fulfilled. A 3rd, he may be a seeker for knowledge. The supreme love, however, is attained only after he has transcended these 3 and has spiritual discernment. There are 5 types of love in our relationship with God. The first kind is known as shanta, peaceful. The devotee still looks upon God with reverence as all-powerful. His attitude is calm, gentle, and peaceful. This is only the beginning. The next type is dasya, in which the devotee considers himself a servant. We find that this relationship is practiced by the great majority of devotees. It is the ideal of the fatherhood of God and the brotherhood of man. The next type of love is sakya, friendship. The next type of love is vasalya, in which the devotee loves God as his child, the baby Jesus, the baby Krishna. By taking the attitude of a father or mother of God, we lose our awareness of God's power and the feelings of awe, reverence, and obedience which keep us at a distance from God. The lover of God who does not care to think of him as almighty, glorious, the Lord of the universe, and so forth. There is one more human representation of divine love. It is known as kanta or madhura, sweet. The Lord is the beloved. Swami Vivekananda says, to a bhakta, these dry details are necessary only to strengthen his will. There is not really so much difference between knowledge, jnana, and love, bhakti, as people sometimes imagine. We shall see as we go on that in the end, they converge and meet at the same point. So also it is with Raja Yoga, meditation, when pursued as a means to attain liberation. It too leads to the same goal. Those who aspire to retain their individual minds after liberation and to remain distinct will have ample opportunity of realizing their aspirations and will enjoy the blessing of Brahman with attributes. Om Asato Ma Satgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotir Gamaya Mrityor Ma Amritam Gamaya. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Let us go from the unreal to the real. Let us go from darkness to light. Let us go from death to immortality. Om, peace, peace, peace. And now, in all of these names, I'm looking forward to a very interesting interaction.
Thank you, Dr. Patrick Horn. Not only are you a magnificent speaker, wonderful to hear your voice and your chanting, you are also, just from talking to you, a wonderful conversationalist. So we open up the meeting to anybody who has a question or a comment. Looks like Judy is trying to get her hand up. You can just jump in, Judy. You don't have to get that thing to work. Go for it.
Yes, I hope you can hear me. Yes, thank you, Dr. Horn. I thought it was quite interesting in your reference to the World Parliament of Religions that Vivekananda made a huge impact. So did William Hugh Judge with the idea of universal brotherhood, which hadn't been talked about very much in the West in the 19th century or even for the past couple of thousand years. And so I'm very glad you mentioned that. But I wanted to go back to the Bhagavad Gita, especially the wonderful reading that was done on faith, that Krishna talks about this complete devotion that is necessary for the disciple. And that even if everything doesn't work for you, I know he says, bring me your failure. Now, why would that be so important? In the academic world, if you get an F, you're out. But Krishna just says, bring me your failure and lay it upon the altar, if that's all you've got. And of course, he also says, I am to be sought and known only by those who have me alone as the object. And I wonder if you could comment more on this, especially on the idea of failure, because in a way we all fail because we're human beings. Thank you.
That is a great question and wonderful reference. And of course, mine is only one opinion. I really enjoyed the interaction with everybody because there are many angles of observation, and we learn a lot from each other in this shared journey of spirituality by sharing our different perspectives. Now, from my perspective, failure is inevitable. Maybe this is because I'm a big fan of Joseph Campbell, who was the editor of the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna and gave us the hero's journey. But I noticed that we learn more through our suffering, and we learn more from our failures than when we do from when we succeed. They are very powerful lessons. Now, from the point of view of a karma yogi, we're supposed to be unattached to whether it turns out good or whether it turns out bad, because from the perspective of karma yoga, whatever we're doing reverently as devotion to God, and that in itself is accepted, whether the results of what we did externally turned out well or bad. So it's like chopping potatoes in the kitchen. You can turn this into an act of worship, and if we're in that state of mind, of a karma yogi, which is these paths, they all overlap. But the devotion is there. Everything we're doing is with devotion and with this equanimity of mind. Then that was the reward in and of itself. And so that's the idea of whether it turns out good or whether it turns out bad. Everything we did was an act of devotion, and so therefore we get the merit, the karmic merit of that. Now, from the point of view of failures at the human level, okay, that's at the level of Krishna accepting our devotion. As long as we are in this equanimity state of mind, equanimity, and everything is devotion, Krishna accepts that, and we realize Krishna, okay, that's a very high ideal. At the level of being human, I love these examples from the hero's journey, like Frodo climbing the mountain to throw the ring into the fiery pit. There are 2 times when he is at the end, and if he doesn't have a rescue from without, he would have failed. There's the time when the orcs are about to get him, and the eagles come and they snatch him up, and off he's rescued. And then even when he's standing on the ledge, he can't throw the ring in. He needs his nemesis, Gollum, to bite his finger off and fall in. And he wasn't going to be able to do it. Even at that, he had gone all that way, and he wasn't going to be able to do it. Something from the outside helped him. Now, what help from the outside can we, as spiritual aspirants, our chosen ideal? To have the faith that we're not forsaken and stuck in a miserable, dark, frustrating condition, that there's lessons there to be learned, and that our faith and the grace of God, the redemptive power, the salvific power of the cosmos and of the Dharma, will be the means by which we get out of what seems like to be the impossible. I'm looking at it from a very big point of view at the moment, the world being in the condition it's in. Oh, it's so much. People have mental health problems, and everybody's taking drugs so that they can relax, because there's so much destruction and violence and all of these this darkness. But if not for a wasteland condition, how could we be redeemed? How could the wasteland be redeemed if it first wasn't corrupted? How could our individual character? Of course, we have to take responsibility for that ourselves in a way, and we learn from these lessons. Humanity learns and grows through these shocks that it gets throughout history, and we get reminded of the divine presence, of miracles, of our own potential, of our real purpose and our own meaning. And, so taking heart. This bhakti is at the level of the heart. So taking heart, that helps to get through.
Monica, did you want to come up and just, it's up to you.
How's that, Judy? Was that okay?
That was lovely. Thank you very much.
Glad it resonates. I welcome all. We should have a very good conversation.
Thank you, Patrick. It's Monica. I have 2 questions. First of all, thank you so much. This was a wonderful presentation. But there's one thing that sort of kind of shocked me. You said that sadhana is not the means by which we attain God. Did you say that?
I said that, and actually, there's monks who have said that too. Yes, I did say that, and I put a qualifier on it. Sadhana is the means by which we purify our minds, and then that which is self-evidence can shine through. Yeah.
It made me realize I probably did not understand the term sadhana as well as I thought. So thank you so much for that.
It is a shocking statement, and no doubt about it, because we are doing all these spiritual practices and different things.
Yes.
It's to prepare us for the supreme, and we don't get there through the preparation. We just make ourselves ready for it. The water has to calm down so that the sun shines through it clearly, rather than all wobbly and distorted, right? And so the sadhana calms the waves of the mind, and then it's a perfect reflection.
Just beautiful. Thank you. The other question I had was, I think one of your slides you posted the different stages of bhakti, and I'm just wondering if you could elaborate a little on that. And is what you showed us what happens to the aspirant over time, or is this something? I'm wondering if I understand what I'm trying to ask. In these different stages, and we all come into incarnation in different stages. So when a person moves toward the Bhakti Yoga path, let's say, are they, because of previous karma, suited for some specific stage as opposed to another, or in the formal training which you seem to convey in these stages, are they like initiatory steps? I guess that's what I'm asking.
Okay, so I just want to perhaps, if I show the slide, and then I can speak better, because there's a couple of slides that there's nuance between them, and one would be Ramanuja, and one would be Chaitanya, and one would be Shankaracharya. And so I just want to be sure that I'm speaking to which one that you might be referring to. So can you see my shared screen?
Yeah, I see the
okay.
closing.
Is it the attitudes? I don't think that it's this. It's not the attitudes of a devotee. Is it Chaitanya's stages, 9 stages?
I think this is it. The 9 stages of bhakti.
Okay. Now it's not the 9 processes, right? Okay.
Uh-oh.
Stages of practice, because this is Vyasa's stages commentary. You see, I got several views here, but we'll stick with Chaitanya, because Chaitanya was the great bhakta in the Hindu tradition. And yes, in a way, there is a progression of this. First, you must have faith. And because of your faith, that will lead you to becoming associated with other devotees and performing devotional service. And that can be different things. That's not necessarily ceremonial. Study is a kind of devotion. To study and to study together is a kind of devotion, not just ceremony, and so then as your faith leads you to associate and perform services and other kinds of activities, your guru will cause you to the chosen ideal. Mm-hmm. You will begin to act in the world different virtues and different attitudes, that kind of devotional service. So if you're a devotee of Jesus, you would be then feeding the hungry, educating the orphans, sheltering the homeless, blessed are the peacemakers, that kind of service. And every ideal has different nuances. Buddha, great compassion, using skillful means to cure ignorance, hatred, greed, that kind of thing. That's that kind of service. And as you're doing these things, unwanted attachments fall away. They just fall away of their own accord. You're no longer hanging out at the bar, interested in the daily melodrama of the political theater, etc. You have You're focused on the higher ideal and expressing those virtues, and you become more steady. It becomes sweeter. You become very attached, and you began to feel great bliss and pure love, just pure love. So, in a way, yes, it is progressive, but it all starts with faith. It all starts with faith.
Just beautiful. Thank you so much.
Question.
Thank you. This is good for me.
So, do you mind keeping the this on the screen just for a minute?
Sure.
There is a piece of writing from a theosophical writer. His name was Bhavani Shankar, and he has something called the 9 stages of devotion. And I'm wondering if he kind of got them from Chaitanya's, because to me it's quite conspicuous that these are very similar. I mean, he has a whole essay on it, and he dedicates, let's say, maybe several sentences or a paragraph to each one of these, and so forth. It's very insightful, and if you'd like, I'll send you a link, in an email.
Oh, yes. I'm not familiar with that piece, so I couldn't answer that question. Someone else would be able to answer it better than me. But my intuition tells me that we repeat this timeless the lessons, and we restate them again and again and again, and pass it forward. And so I wouldn't be surprised if it was inspired by this.
Yeah, it could be. So even I mean, I'll go back and read that article, and I'll look at this slide later. My question, if you wouldn't mind, why don't you unshare it again? Thank you, though. I got a question that has to do with you mentioned this kind of mantra, the end in view, several times, and you also mentioned the idea of a chosen ideal. So this bhakti apparently could, and I think in one of your slides you said that the devotion could be directed towards a guru, it could be directed towards God, it could be directed towards humanity. My question has to do with a kind of a Gandhian idea of trusteeship, and because he was dealing with economics and so forth, the different ways of dealing with one's resources. He was very big on the idea of, and as we know, he was kind of a karma yogi and a kind of a bhakti yogi in a lot of ways. And also in a lot of ways that people don't know, he was quite the jnana yogi. He was quite a thinker, really. I mean, he wrote voluminously. So anyway, getting back to, he talked about ends and means. And I was wondering, how there's the idea that the ends don't justify the means, that the ends really, the means have to be in line with the ends. And it occurred to me just listening to your presentation at one point that the end in view, that the means to get there have to be in alignment with that end in view. And then I went way out on a limb and I thought, I wonder if that has anything to do with non-dual bhakti, if one's means are in alignment with one's ends. Sorry if that one's a little too much of a far-fetched.
I love studying religions, and so I can draw from a big treasury of scriptures that, and so at the moment, what came to me as you were describing this was Jesus. And in the Bible, where it says, "Seek ye first the kingdom of heaven, and all other things shall be added unto you." This is Bhakti Yoga. God, and then all other things. That would be the in the four goals of life in the Vedic tradition. You do your dharma, and by doing your dharma, then your prosperity and your pleasure and your freedom are guaranteed. You do your dharma. So seek ye first the kingdom of God, the means and the end. We need love, and what do we get from love? From loving, we get devotion, and our love increases. We become more skillful in love. We become more receptive to receiving love. So that's the bhakti is seeking God in love, and it's the only true growth is growth in love. And so ends and means, we're seeking that supreme love, and the way we get there is through all of these loving, devotional, reverent attitudes. And then, oh look, that which we're seeking to become, we already are.
That's the non-dual.
Yeah, exactly.
It's beautiful. Thank you. Thanks for dipping into that particular chest.
Yeah.
Are there any
treasure chest of wisdom, humanity's accumulated wisdom.
What an amazing time to be alive, right? We have access to all these jewels and gems, and they're so universal.
It's the most unique moment in human history, and we have such a great opportunity. So
we got a hand from Miluka Rivera.
Hi, Miluka.
Oh, hello, Dr. Patrick. That was absolutely lovely.
Thank you.
The 9 stages of devotion from the Gita is that what you were talking about too? Yeah, it's quite beautiful, and bringing the love and unity within all, and you start getting acquainted with kindred spirits, and you just want to talk only about God and the teachings, but it's a beautiful thing. I was thinking that there are other great beings that they are not familiar with any of these, but yet they have done a lot of service for humanity, like Mother Teresa. And she, as you know, she was Catholic. And then so another nun, Sor Juana Inés de la Cruz, she also even has some trance, and and she kind of, I think she went into initiation, and she was cared for by the other nuns. So we know that that souls are different. They come with different information. It's just a matter of when they awaken. I was wondering how you see the point of view of nuns, and they practice service. Is that what you were saying, right? Any thoughts on that?
Yes, they nuns, monks, they have given their lives to something other than the acquisition of personal possessions and private amusements and enjoyments. They have put themselves under a rule and regulation, and they are practicing discipline in a very concentrated environment that is intended ultimately to give them that vision of God. Saint Teresa of Avila, for example, there's all kinds of writings, or Saint John of the Cross, and this is not an easy path. And the nuns, the monks, they have faith. They are associating with other devotees who have made a very serious commitment to sacrifice their personal life for the ideal within their order. their order will hopefully help them attain their own personal liberation and make them strong so that they can be of service in the world, feeding the hungry, healing the sick, educating the orphans, that kind of worldly activity, which for them isn't a worldly activity. It's a form of devotional service, a kind of bhakti that comes from their ideal. So we can think of nuns and monks and religious professionals as those who, because of their faith and because of their devotion, they're renouncing something of selfishness for a mission that includes their own salvation or their own liberation, something like this. I've known a lot of monks and nuns from many different traditions, and some of them are very cloistered and live lives of that are very much segregated from the ordinary happenings of the world, and others are in the world but not of the world, and they do amazing service even if they're not wearing special capes and scarves. The life of the nun or the monk is that of a sincere devotee and a seeker after the mystical consciousness to be of use. And every one of us who is a seeker, something of monasticism is of interest to us, because monasticism is based on the Greek word monos, monad or one, and it's about that non-dual existence, coming into that a non-dual state of consciousness, no separation, and experiencing that as love and expressing that in a loving way.
Thank you so much. That was lovely.
Our time is technically up, but we always run over. So,
Okay.
Do you have energy and time to take a few more questions?
Absolutely. Yes. This is a great delight to be here with everybody. And as long as you stay, I'll be here to have a good conversation.
All right. Is there anybody who would like to ask a question? Be fearless
Or make a comment.
or make a comment.
And yeah.
Hey, Monica is going to be here right away. She'll be right here.
Thank you, Patrick. I had a question about one of your slides, and I think it was at the very beginning, and it seemed to indicate something about evolution, because I saw mineral, vegetable, animal, that whole thing. Could you explain that particular slide a little bit more? Because I was wondering, how the activity of bhakti fits into what I thought I was seeing, which was like evolution in the different kingdoms.
Yes.
Where?
This one, the qualifications of the aspirant.
Here we go. Elemental,
Yes.
vegetable, animal, human, divine.
Yes, that is the trajectory of evolution, right? Out of the protoplasm, the elemental world, all the teeny weenies, and that could be described as in our poetic way, with from say the Sankhya system and Kapila, with our fire, earth, air, wind, our water and ether, or akasha. It could be described that way. It could also be described from the way of the quantum with all of the quirks and the electrons and the protons and all of the electromagnetism that brings forward the mineral existence of the earth and the bones of our body, the vegetable existence, which is like the vital sheath and the nervous system and all of the electricity in the body, the animal, which is our muscles and our purely physical existence, our human existence, which has the unique third eye or the eye of the mind, the power of discernment, of right judgment, of discrimination, which is our bodhisattva nature. Then we start entering into divinity. When the soul, which is potentially divine, becomes actually divine. Now, we got to be careful with that statement because it always was. It's just ignorance and confusion. It was like a veil over it that was hiding it. And then as we have that sattvic mind, the bodhisattva, our mind becomes calm and clear, and what is our true nature comes through. So when we're merely human, we've got all of our desire. We've got to eat and to reproduce and to make the body comfortable and amuse it. And we've got our economies, which serve that kind of thing. But we're not just in this world as a body. We're in this world as the unique human intelligence, that Buddha nature, and the true nature of the soul. And so we have to desire spirituality. We have to practice. We have to begin to have realizations of truth, and that is expressed in action. Right? We have to embody that. It's not just merely an intellectual speculation. And we move from being an aspirant to being an adept. Our wisdom becomes steady. We become perfected. We become liberated from the sorrows and the uncertainties of suffering. And so we desire spirituality. We become a disciple of a teaching, and we grow in our capacity to be love, to experience love. That's the devotee. And so there, then at the bottom of the slide, according to the Vedic tradition, based on our karma, we are born in different capacities. So some people are ordinary, the common man who's ruled by desire. And then there are those who are what's called the siddhas. They have courage, the courage to practice, the courage to follow the faith, through the life of discipline, to come to realization. And then you have those who are born to sit with their guru and to be companions, and those who are eternally free based on past karma.
Yes, thank you. Now, there's one little thing more.
Yes.
Above letter B, regarding the adept, the word siddha has a different connotation than the word siddha in the second group of explanations. So one says liberated, perfected above, referring to the adept. And then number 2 at the bottom 4 says not born perfect, but struggle and realize.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm wondering, is there what are we talking about? A matter of development that we're seeing this same word defined differently? in
Well,
two different ways?
first, with all Sanskrit is a very interesting and very complicated language. That for every Sanskrit word, there's at least 5 definitions, and among them, there's some quality of God, some kind of practice. You also, in some cases, have the complete opposite of the word, and then there's jokes that are built in, because there's the siddha who is liberated has siddhis, which are powers and capacities, and there's other jokes that I'm not sure that who all is on the call, so some things are in the right smoke filled room, but but in this case, the distinction is that the siddha it's not so much development. It's again the idea of just clearing away that which obstructs what is naturally there. So there are those who are born with less ignorance and confusion, and they have the courage to practice, so they become liberated and perfected. Okay. So there's a sense of the word where it's someone who has less to travel than one who is feeling inertia. There's a great deal of ignorance and confusion, a very heavy veil, very difficult to lift. So someone with a greater capacity who is also realized that who realize that capacity. So I wouldn't use the word development, but there's a nuance there. You could be someone who's on the path or someone who's reached the goal, and using that same Sanskrit word. It's a complication in the language, and it depends on when you're reading the text, like what era, from what school of philosophy specifically, and you have to use your discernment to really just understand, well, which one are they referring to? Are they referring to someone who's doing sadhana to purify the mind, or someone who's already purified their mind? And perhaps there's the reason that the word is used in both instances is because, the joke's on us. There's not much difference. Like to attain love, you practice love, and kind of thing. Yes. So something along those lines. You have to be careful. These rishis were poets. They're, the best way to translate rishi is poet, and so how poetry can be ambiguous sometimes, and there's wordplay. So here's an instance where I think that there's wordplay. I'm glad you asked.
Thank you very much.
Could I?
Sure. There are some questions in chat too. I don't know if you can take it up.
Well, okay. Do you think there's let's open.
You want me to take this down? Okay, there we go.
Yeah.
Something's in the chat.
Most everything in the chat is just people just exuberantly praising you.
Oh, very good. Well, no, they're praising the presentation, which is the transmitted wisdom, and so we all benefit from it.
I got a question. There was, let's see, how many people? I think there's people still here. They haven't left. I got a question. HPB famously, in her first great book, Isis Unveiled. I don't know if it's rhetorical writing, but whatever it is, it's beautiful. And it does fit in with the way she lived her life. She says, I traveled the earth. I traveled all around. And she doesn't say this in her writing, but the true facts are she became initiated in just about everything, in all continents. And the fact that these teachers and beings recognized who she was when she approached them is interesting. But the way she writes it in Isis Unveiled is we came across that the object of the search was who, where, what is God. Okay, it's just magnificent. But then she came across these rishis, these beings, and she started realizing that man's spirit proves God's spirit. And I don't think she's referring to, well, maybe she's referring to all human beings, but it was in the same breath as talking about these superb rishis that she met and that she studied under and so forth. But what do you think about that kind of mantra, man's spirit proves God's spirit?
Yes. Well, first, HPB was someone who had courage. She was a bold character, and there is great strength. And also the eccentricities, right? There's, people are always curious about saints, but saints are actually very difficult to live with. They're so unique and unusual in many different ways, right? Not a common person. Now, to answer the question, building off of that, you do have the common person who is ruled by desire. And underneath the veil of ignorance and confusion and glamour and vanity, the same indwelling spirit is shining there as in anyone else. But in these disciples and these siddhas and these aspirants and adepts who have gone through training, had experiences, they have a greater manifestation of that indwelling spirit than the common person. So the person who's the non-dualist, the absolute non-dualist, and sees God everywhere, worships everybody and everything that they come across as God. But is the criminal really a good mask for the divine? Wouldn't you want to place it on someone who carries that ideal and expresses it more clearly? Yes, sinner or saint, the indwelling spirit is the same, but in one, the degree of manifestation is greater. And so we can see it easily and more clearly in these realized ones. So the indwelling spirit is the same. That drop of water is different from God only in degree, like the ocean. Ocean is God, drop of water is the human. There's no difference in kind, it's just a difference in degree. And there are some humans who are able to, through the purification of their mind and their great love and their great faith, they're able to express more of their divine potential. Like Swamiji said in that first thing that I wrote, each soul is potentially divine. Not all of them are exhibiting or manifesting what we would call the qualities of the divine. You get to the non-dual point of view and you can see that divine quality showing through no matter what, then you are a great seer, a great master yourself. But until you get to that place, it's better to put it where that focus where it's deserved. We can see it coming through the great saints, the great stages, the rishis, all of these. We see it better through them. So that's does that answer the question?
It's excellent. Thank you very, very much for dedicating so much focus and heart to this. And once again, Patrick, thank you very, very much. And thank you all for coming.
Thank you, Patrick. Wonderful.
May peace prevail on earth.
Namaste.
Namaste.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.